Welcome to the MRO Exchange, Connecting Healthcare Executives, your go-to podcast for staying informed in the dynamic healthcare world, where MRO discusses industry trends and topics with prominent healthcare leaders. In each episode, we delve into the intricate landscape of the U.S. healthcare system, shining a light on the immense responsibility shouldered by providers to effectively acquire, manage, and share clinical data with data consumers. Join MRO experts and healthcare executives as they navigate the important dynamics within this highly complex environment. From the surge in healthcare ecosystem demands to the influx of structured and unstructured data scattered across diverse systems, along with the ever-growing compliance, security, and privacy expectations, the MRO Exchange, Connecting Healthcare Executives, unravels it all for you. Tune in for a comprehensive exploration of the pressing issues shaping the healthcare industry today.
Hi, I'm Mo Weitnauer, and thanks for tuning in to The Exchange, where we connect with healthcare executives. You can learn more about me and my background on the MRO website, mrocorp.com, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Today, I'm very excited to have with us on the podcast Frank Jackson. Frank is a colleague here at MRO. Frank leads our clinical quality and payer solution as the SVP and general manager. Welcome, Frank.
Mo, thank you. It's good to be with you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. So, Frank, I'll let you introduce yourself, who you are, how long you've been at MRO, and some of your background.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm Frank Jackson. As Mo, you mentioned, I'm responsible for the clinical quality and payer solutions. I've been here just 7 months, joined in March. And a little bit about my background. I sort of my journey in healthcare quickly. When I left school with a technology degree, I went to work for McDonnell Douglas and worked on F-15 fighter planes, especially navigation systems. And a couple of years later, I sort of transitioned to healthcare. And in retrospect, I think it was a more difficult industry than working on F-15 fighter planes. But my experience includes, working in areas of healthcare around reducing care, the cost of care, and trying to improve outcomes for patients. I've worked Blue Cross plans, Kaiser plans. I work with the Medicaid. Roles range from CIO to COO. But then in the last 15 years, I've worked with data, first with claims, but the last dozen years I've worked with clinical data and the potential of using clinical data to solve a lot of the healthcare problems. So I'm excited to kind of talk about clinical data quality. It's close to my heart.
That's fantastic. I am so excited. And I can't believe you've been here for 7 months. It feels like just yesterday. I guess when you're having fun, time goes by so fast.
It does.
Awesome. And one day I do want to hear more about the fighter planes, because healthcare does feel like you're operating a fighter plane every day. So,
more advanced.
Absolutely. Frank, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about a topic that I know you are very, very knowledgeable about. As you know, here at MRO, we care about exchanging clinical data. But there's one thing about exchanging clinical data across all different parts of healthcare. But one of your experiences is really, as you said, dealing with clinical quality. So can you, for our audience, define what clinical data quality means to you?
Sure. So at a high level, at least how I think of clinical data quality is that your data has sort of the characteristics of accuracy or reliability or completeness or latency that's needed to solve the particular healthcare problem that you are trying to solve. And so I'm a firm believer in clinical data quality, more in the framework of a fit for purpose, that there's different levels of clinical data quality or areas of accuracy and reliability. Certainly if in data quality, if you're trying to if it's a care workflow and it's life and death, obviously clinical data quality is one thing. If you're doing an analytic, it's something else. So clinical data quality with those dimensions is really fit for use, like getting it good enough for the problem you're solving. And then second, I would just say add one more layer, that especially with Mo, you and I, our career, we have spent a lot of time extracting and combining clinical data. And so there's an added layer kind of in using clinical data that's not talked about much that I think is a dimension of clinical data quality. And it's what I would kind of call semantic interoperability. So when you're harmonizing, clinical data across EHRs or, or different ways providers code and across health systems, that you're combining that data for whatever use case that you have a shared meaning of that data. I call that semantic interoperability, but how you sort of harmonize the data is another layer, ensuring that you're making the right decisions for your particular use case along the way. Hope that helped.
That's really, really interesting, and intuitive to think about different EHRs and different ways that physicians document or clinicians document. Now, what's the consequence of poor clinical data quality? Like, why is this so important? Isn't it sufficient? I mean, we at MRO care about exchanging data. Why is it not enough to just exchange data?
Yeah, I think, all of my experience early on in my career where I was working in pop health and I was working in using the data, I saw that when the data quality wasn't reliable, it wasn't complete, that the value you extract out of it for these different use cases starts becoming diminished. So the reason it's important is, and again, data quality needs to be looked at use case by use case, is the value you get downstream of using that data is diminished. And I've seen that over and over around the diminished use case. So, I mean, that ultimately is a reason. And of course, you can make bad decisions. You can think there's a cost of care trend that's not really there. You might miss risk. And so there's like consequences of that. And even in AI, where data maybe is poor, you're training and creating models that are inaccurate. And so ultimately, it hurts the value that you're extracting from data.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, especially when you think about the consequences in terms of information that addresses actual care delivery and patients' lives. So
Right,
having the
right.
data not be accurate, I can see that being scarier than a fighter pilot. So for sure. And tell me a little bit, there's different programs to kind of validate the integrity of data. So I'm thinking of NCQA's DAV program, that MRO, we are validated data stream. How does that play into the idea of clinical data quality?
Yeah, let me step back a little bit and tell you how I kind of think of the different ways people approach it, and I can bring it forward to use cases like HEDIS and NCQA. But ultimately, I think a lot of organizations, healthcare organizations, one end of the spectrum treat data quality sort of as a point solution, that it's a problem to be solved today, and then you move on tomorrow. Under the other end of the spectrum, where I think where they're successful is they treat it as really more of a life cycle, a continuous improvement, and so it's a continuous attention to the data, and you typically have at least three components of a program, whether it's for NCQA or if it's for a care workflow. And the three things I usually like to see in this kind of program lifecycle is detection, where you have the right capabilities to detect for your use case the quality of the data that you're looking for, so you're able to measure it and profile it. The second is you've got the rules and standards of how to handle the exceptions, and when how to evaluate it, and you're integrating the sort of the in business person who's using that data into those conversations. And then lastly is data governance. Again, this is where you bring domain experts, you bring business, you bring technology, interop skill sets, where they're coming together, and it's a living process where you're tackling data problems and how to handle it. And with DAB certified and HEDIS, often we find new data patterns in clinical data, and we're asking the HEDIS experts how they want it mapped in the numerators, the denominator. So again, a lot of this is nuance. It requires the business, sometimes clinical, to get involved. So again, detection, rules, and governance, and treating it kind of a continuous program is really the key here.
Got it. Got it. No, that's really the level of complexity, especially with the different programs. You think HEDIS, you think risk adjustment, you think care management, and all those other downstream use cases. I think probably I like what you said. It's important for things to be fit for purpose and ensure that we're ensuring the right quality for the right use cases. So that's a very, very insightful comment. Now, what are some of the ways, if you can talk to me about different approaches that healthcare organizations you've seen take to improving clinical data quality?
Yeah, so part of the challenge we face in clinical data quality is oftentimes if you're extracting the data from an EHR, you don't always have influence on the way the provider is coding. So I think sometimes when you do have influence, it's creating kind of a governance and a dialogue with practices, and ideally you're trying to correct data at the source if you can, if you have that kind of relationship. So in some of the cases at MRO, we engage with the provider, and so we see problems at the source. We're able to some limited degree be able to influence the practices or coding patterns so that the accuracy of the data is corrected. And also, I think if that's not available, ultimately you have to make a lot of decisions whether to correct it, based on what your best guess is, or throw it out potentially. But ultimately, if you can't influence the source of the mistake, the use of automation technology, I've seen the use of AI where you can learn how to fix the data that comes in a certain pattern and automate some of that if you're careful. And it depends on whether you're comfortable adjusting it and you're confident that it meets your use case along the way. But again, if you can solve it at the source, you can. But often in this business, we don't have that influence, and so you're detecting it, you're monitoring it, and then you create rules to remediate it if you can, or not use it in your use case, so you're not polluting kind of the final document.
Yeah, that's really so. I like that you were pointing out the decision making that you have to make. So it's one thing to identify that you have poor data quality, but it's yet another to figure out, do I go back and educate the provider so that they're documenting accurately? Or do I just say, hey, that patient's not going to make it into my numerator because I don't trust
Right.
the documentation? So you already brought it up. AI. I would not be a cool kid if I did not mention AI. So what have you seen as far as the role of generative AI specifically in improving clinical data quality? Is there somebody out there who's been able to leverage, Gemini or any of the other models out there to improve clinical data quality that you're finding as a good approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing a lot of early stage use of AI, and you see vendors with it, and I mean, you have for a while seen AI kind of be assisting providers in accurately diagnosing and treating, and even suggesting decision making at the clinical level. But you also see some of those where they document more, I would say more accurately. And so those AI tools that assist the provider documentation sometimes is more accurate. So when you extract it out, it reflects a little closer to the meaning.
Mm.
But yeah, but you see a lot of vendors using generative AI to look at the unstructured part of charts, and try to identify and extract meaning out of it. You've got a lot of large language models that kind of evolve from NLP that also are helping. But you've got a lot of AI models that are also helping, I say, in the detection. Today, we use a lot of maybe statistical profiling to detect problems, but AI is now starting to be used for, especially with deep learning, to be more advanced in evaluating what you normally would clinically do looking at the data. They can learn and detect a lot more nuance in data quality on the clinical side than you used to. So you're starting to see some of those models and vendors along the way, really along monitoring. And I think some of them are getting into recommended, how do you recommend coding it or fixing it along the way. But I see it more in the detection capability right now. But I see that leapfrogging moving pretty quickly. Certainly I would say if you're not using AI or experimenting with it in the clinical data quality, you're missing out because it's too hard to use old technology. It's too voluminous and it's too much nuance there. I'm, starting to look at it is really what I think all programs should be doing.
For sure. No, that's interesting. It makes me remember the days when we were moving from ICD-9 to ICD-10. It was like the sky's falling, and it was kind of a non-event for a lot of people. But the complexity of the different codes and programs that we have, I think, is much higher. So it needs more than just a human. Frank, I feel like we should have 5 more podcasts just to nerd out on clinical data quality, but we have to stop here. So thank you for spending the time with us today.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Mo.
Thank you, everybody. Again, you can find us on MROcorp.com, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
You've been listening to the MRO Exchange, where we connect healthcare execs. For more insights and to hear other healthcare executives' exchanges, visit the show's page on MROcorp.com and be sure to explore additional resources and thought leadership articles. You can also check out the program page on healthcarenowradio.com. Finally, be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn or X at MRO Corp. Until we talk again, this is the MRO Exchange, where healthcare execs connect.